On this episode, scour and sediment deposition in the high flow bypass of a wetland. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. Now today, I'm going to share with you something really simple and really minor that I noticed while I was out at a wetland the other day. So the Bowies Flat wetland is in Brisbane. It's pretty old. It's from circa the year 2000. Go plus or minus 2 years and we're in the sort of ballpark there. It was a high profile wetland. Stuff didn't really go right for it, but I do nip back every now and then to take a look at it and see what's going on. And like most wetlands, most well-designed wetlands, it has an inlet pond, it has what should be the macrophyte area, but in fact there's not a lot of plants in there because that's what went wrong, and it has a high flow bypass. And in this case, the high flow bypass is grassed, and it's straight for a fair portion, then it takes a dog leg to the left till it gets kind of down to the outlet and rejoins the channel downstream. And in this instance, I was just walking down it the other day and I noticed that there was a fair bit of sediment accumulating in it over time because there's a walking path, a concrete path that crosses it. And I'd noticed that, now I didn't see this when this was built, but I'm pretty confident they would have got the levels pretty close here so that the grass and the concrete path were at the same level. But I noticed now, some 15 years later, that the concrete path was, maybe 75 mils lower than the grass next to it in one certain section. I was like, okay, I reckon there's sediment accumulating in this when the high flows happen, and possibly some washing down off the adjacent bank. Like, okay, that's interesting. Then I walked down a little bit further to where this left-hand dog leg happens, and I noticed, when you think of like creek form and creek function, when a creek or a waterway or a river, let's say, turns a corner, you get on the inside of the bend this area of low velocity where sediment settles out, and then on the outside of the bend where there's the longer path for it to get round, you get a relatively higher velocity and it scours out deeper and it scours out the outside bank, which is ultimately how rivers end up with this sinuous twisting path to them, because they're gradually scouring out the outside bend until the radius of the bend gets wide enough that the velocity is low enough that there's no more scour and it settles into a relatively comfortable pattern. Anyway, you know about that, and I noticed what I think is that happening in this high flow bypass channel. I can't be sure, but I just found it really interesting. So here's a little picture of that. And what you can see here is on the inside of the bend, we've got relatively higher grass, relatively more grass, it's lusher. And on the outside of the bend, there's relatively less, it's really short, it's yellower, so it's drier. It's almost as if like the topsoil that was there has washed away and it's now only just hanging on in some bad subsoils. And it's hard around the outside edge. And I think, I can't prove it, but I think that's an example of, this function that we more commonly see in creeks and streams. And I thought you might find that interesting. And that's it. Enjoy.